Sometimes I'll just be talking to somebody and I'll say, well, yeah, it's the Jurassic Park problem. And nobody knows what I'm talking about, which is common. That happens. It happens probably too often. When I say Jurassic Park problem, I'm referring to a moment. I can distinctly remember the first time I read the moment. In the original Jurassic Park book, which I read, I think in like 8th or 9th grade, I remember it was during standardized testing, and the teacher said, you couldn't, when you finish your section of the test, you couldn't leave, you couldn't talk to your friends, you could sit quietly, or you could read a book. And I had brought Jurassic Park, and I couldn't wait to get to the next section of Jurassic Park. So I just rushed through the standardized testing. I'm sure that was not good, but we don't make good decisions when we're in 8th or 9th grade or ever. And so there's a moment in the book when one of the main characters, Ian Malcolm, he's listening to the owner and creator to talk so proudly about their genetic, scientific, revolutionary practices to recreate, rehatch, regrow dinosaurs, extinct creatures. And he's not impressed. Ian Malcolm's not impressed at all. And this is one of the more famous moments from the original movie too. Also, each Jurassic Park movie gets worse than the last one. They're so bad. But the original, it's pretty good. It's actually not true to the book. But anyway, that's not the point. In the movie, as well as in the book, Ian Malcolm, he says basically, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not you could recreate the dinosaurs that you never stopped to ask whether or not you should create the dinosaur. And that's what whenever I'm talking to someone about the future of AI, I'll be like, well, that's the Jurassic Park problem. And when people just, their eyes glaze over and they're pretty used to it with me. Like they have no idea what I'm talking about. I think that happens a lot. That's what I'm talking about, is that the question of you didn't think ahead, right? You thought, can I do this? There's so many people who have created AI and implemented it, made it publicly available, but how many people have said, should we be doing this? This episode 3 of the University of Missouri Teaching for Learning Center's AI Critical Literacy podcast is about the Jurassic Park problem. It's about critical literacy and AI as it applies to the ethics and the practices that come with using AI. And in the context of our podcast, of how we use these tools with our students, for our students. And of course, the podcast is based and guided by Ethan Mollick's book, Co-Intelligence, which we talk about chapters 2 and 3. And I'm the host, Jared Schroeder, an associate professor at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. And I each week welcome a guest who I ask inane and unclear questions to, and they very politely provide clear and thought-provoking answers. Our guest for this episode is University of Missouri College of Engineering Dean Marisa Chrysochoou. And what follows is just a really, I think, thought-provoking discussion about the ethics and practices that go into using AI, that go into training AI, that go into how we come to know and learn, how our students come to know and learn when they engage with AI. This was my first opportunity to really have a conversation with Dean Chrysochoou, and she has particular expertise in AI and neurodiversity and how it can help and guide students. And she also had just really insightful thoughts. We didn't agree on all of the questions and ideas that were raised in Mollick's book, so I think that really helped our discussion. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Here's my discussion with Dean Chrysochoou.
I'm Marisa Chrysochoou, and I am the Dean of Engineering here at the University of Missouri.
I've asked every guest this so far. What was your first experience with AI?
So I had last year, in my previous institution at the University of Connecticut, I was working with a colleague who was using AI a lot. He was using ChatGPT maybe a year and a half ago. And I was dealing with a very difficult email, like an exchange with a colleague that was quite kind of like heated. And he's like, let me show you, what GPT can do. And he programmed like a little version that was me, like you're a department chair, you're a woman, you're dealing with this person. And then it spat out like 4 different answers, versions. And I was like, that were all very good. And I was like, wow, this thing is good. And so after that, I was like, okay, I'll make my own account. And I started using it.
Cool. So that's a pretty recent usage of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I've had people, I had a guest who went all the way back into the 80s. So, but I mean, I think for most of us, it really is a new thing. It's a new problem. We use the Mollick book in this podcast. I recently brought you a copy of that book. Did you have any overall impressions of anything?
I read the first 3 chapters.
Okay, good.
Because I have a lot going on.
No, I'm sure you do.
But I would say that I felt that it was overall pretty good at showing both sides, both the concerns and the embracing part of the AI. So I liked that. I did think that. When was it published? Was it a year, 2 years ago?
I think it's a 2024 copyright, which means he was writing in 2023,
yeah.
probably.
And it's kind of like interesting, that it feels that some of the things that he's describing are for an audience that's maybe a little older or a little less familiar with the technology. I kind of like feel that a lot of the young students will be like, I'm already like past all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't even think about ethics or this or that. It's just like part of my life. What are you talking about?
Maybe they should. I mean, that's one of the purposes of this podcast, right? Is so we can help our faculty and instructors on campus think about AI critically and to help our students think about it critically. I guess one of the things he's talking, these chapters that we're talking about today are really about ethics and usage and how we should be using this. And these are the big heart of it questions, I feel like. One of the things I wrote down is what kind of decisions should we be making as educators about the ethics and practices surrounding AI when it comes to teaching and learning? Did you have a chance to think about that at all? It's a big question.
I have actually thought about this a lot in the past because I've kind of like written proposals and worked with people. Like engineering education is one of my own personal areas of research. And so after I had kind of like my initial experience with the AI, I was like, okay, this thing is going to be big. So I did think about this quite a bit. I will also admit that I have thought about this more from the practical standpoint, as in I already take it for granted that students are going to use it. And I have never looked at it from the perspective of how will I prevent them from using it or cheating or all of that. Like I just have thought, how can I adjust, what I teach, how I teach it in a way that can work with AI and it can be a tool towards better learning rather than me trying to go kind of like against the tsunami. So
right. I agree. Like it's coming. It's here. They're going to use it. They probably need to use it for work to some extent, depending on what they do when they graduate. So yeah, denying. I think there's definitely classes that we could say it's up to the instructor, of course, but there's definitely classes that makes more sense than others to use AI in. But I agree with you that was one of the really good things about the AI task force was, we didn't spend a lot of time trying to catch the students, like to get them, we like, just like you said, we were trying to think about how do we work with where they already are? And it's kind of this feeling like, I don't know, because I'm teaching my classes and I'm trying to think, how do I work with this thing that's already present? And how do I have my TAs recently take my tests using only AI to see what grade my students would get if they just purely used AI, because I do open note tests. I don't treat the students like criminals there either. I just like real life. You have resources usually to get information.
Yep.
Let's practice this. And I had the students take it the AI got about a 60 to a 70%. So the AI will not help you.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
It is terrible. And the students got the same grade though. So neither humans nor computers can beat the test apparently. But anyway, I really agree with you. So we should be thinking, let me think. The question was, what kind of decisions should we be making as educators about ethics? And you're arguing and making the point that we should be learning to work with the students, not against the students. Would that be a fair synopsis of that?
Yes. I think that's part of it. And the other part, if you want to bring ethics into it, I bring my ethics as an educator and my kind of like obligation to teach the students on what the next generation of engineers and professionals, how they're going to work, so that it is part of kind of like my ethical responsibility to learn how to use this and learn how this is going to be useful to the students, so that I best prepare them for, the time that they're going to graduate and go into the world. So that's kind of like my own standpoint on that.
Right. That makes sense. So we have to kind of figure, like, how do I teach them? How do I prepare them for their futures if I don't understand it in the first place? And maybe we as a faculty member and instructor, we engage with the AI and we say, this isn't for me, or this isn't for my class, or this isn't necessary for my field, but at least we engage with it enough to know whether or not we needed to. One of the things that the Moloch chapters talked about a lot was the training of the AI, and I thought that was really helpful. And I don't know, with your engineering background, you and I are coming to this probably from completely different worlds. I have so little understanding of how it the black boxness of it all. And I think a lot of us don't know. I don't think a lot of us understand. It's just like the internet, right? When I ask my students how the internet works, they are just like, I don't know. I tell it to do something and it does. And so we talked about training. Did you have any thoughts about the training part that you read? Did he do it? Did he do it right? Did you think he got it right? He's coming from business. You're coming from engineering. I'm coming from journalism. Do you feel like he got it right?
I think, and again, I'm an environmental engineer, to be completely completely honest. So it's not that I have the engineering part of this myself. I will, from my understanding and reading and working with this, is that he has gotten it right. I mean, to the extent that we also know how these things are trained, right? Because I think that we don't quite know how proprietary AI is trained. And so we assume that it gets access to certain data sets that are openly available, but what we do know for sure is that it does take, certain, it has to be on the web, it is in English, it is something that, people published and who publishes and when they publish, how they publish, what kind of use do they express. And so for me, this is actually one of the bigger problems for AI. And where I disagree to some extent is this whole notion of, it's better for us to think about intellectual property and limit the AI to IP versus making it as wide as possible so that more voices and more information is represented. Like if I weigh the two things against each other, for me, the wider access to a training data set is more beneficial to humanity overall compared to thinking about the IP of individuals, because AI influences a very large number of people, whereas IP influences the individuals. And so I prioritize thinking about the larger picture. And this is something actually where we put some thought with some of my colleagues writing a proposal about neurodiversity and AI and how different types of processing, brain processing, ways or dyslexia or kind of like things like that are represented in the way that AI interacts with humans. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Technology Trap.
No, I'm not. Please tell me. Yeah.
It's essentially, it talks about how from the Industrial Revolution and after that, technology, the evolution of technology benefits certain segments of the population and disadvantages other segments of the population. Mm-hmm. And so with AI is the same thing. And so for me, getting ahead of this and making sure that training benefits and represents as many people as possible is a key challenge.
Because that is absolutely a problem and a question. I think when we're talking about AI critical literacy for faculty members at Mizzou, knowing and being able to teach our students about how the training works, to some extent, like you don't need to know the zeros and ones of it probably, but so much like we were talking about, what does the AI know? Because it's going to affect what your students know. It's going to affect what you think you know. And one of my biggest concerns is that the black boxness of it all is limiting when we ask it questions and we get reliant on it. And it becomes like our knowledge pool that we keep dipping out of to get information out of instead of remembering it ourselves or getting it out of books, that we won't realize that it doesn't have everything or that it has more of something than something else. If you want to ask it something about Chicago, it's going to know a lot about Chicago because a lot's written about Chicago. And so it's going to be very detailed information. If you want to ask it about Mexico, Missouri, which that's a real place. Yes. I actually have never been there, but I've seen it on the map. If you ask about Mexico, Missouri, it's not going to know as much because not as much has been written. It's going to have like a Wikipedia entry level. And so there's rural versus city biases along with all kinds. That's just one of maybe dozens of biases that it has. So I think it's really healthy for our faculty to be thinking, what does the AI know? What does it not know? How is it trained? Just to the extent of what does it know for my field? What does it know for my students? What does it not know? And then one additional thing is, what is it not telling me, right? So sometimes it knows, but it's
right.
They put a lot of guardrails on these things. And I've had my students before try to ask it things, and it said, I can't tell you, or, it's not in my, and I mean, in some ways I really appreciate the guardrails. I think they're well-meaning in many instances because they've had some bad experiments where they didn't put the guardrails. But at the same time, the guardrails are a form of knowledge limitation, right? That the corporation looking out for itself or looking out for the users is limiting what we can know. So we have two limitations there. The training data it knows, and then the training, and then the decisions the corporations or the entity that controls it makes about what it's going to allow the tool to tell users. I hope that's really helpful to people to just think about, because I mean, this podcast isn't, I don't want to, I guess as a former journalist, I don't want to tell people what to think. I just want to tell them what to think about. Like, I want to give people things to think about. You did mention the copyright, and I thought that's worth noting that right now, the New York Times is suing both OpenAI and Microsoft. And I've had some interaction with the lawyers, and I have, I guess, maybe a slightly different perspective than you do. I really value what you said. I just, economic model wise, cost of creating new information is, there's a cost, a financial cost.
Yes.
And so if there's no one that has the resources to create new information, then the AI will be left to not train on anything new. And so that's my other side of the coin is, yes, it makes so much sense, the accessibility and the getting rid of bias by getting more expansive information out. But at the same time, if there's no one who could be employed to gather new information, to create and publish, if there's no economic model, then we won't have new information. I think that's two sides of the coin, maybe.
Absolutely.
I think it's healthy to have both, right? Like,
yep. We're
not here to decide this. I just hope that people will think about both sides. And whatever side you want to come down on, but I think it's a pretty uphill climb for the New York Times to win these cases. I teach copyright's not my research area, but I teach it to my undergraduates, and it's probably a fair use. But that case will determine the future of information in our country. Another thing that the chapters talked about, was just this black boxness, which I've already mentioned a few times. How much do you think instructors really need to know about how the tools work in order to teach their students, right? There's the front interface that we all are used to. We've all seen the ChatGPT blinking cursor, basically, or the Gemini, what do you want to know today, or whatever it says. Or my students my children talk to ChatGPT. Like, I'll be like, I don't know, what's the story with that? My son will just be like, ChatGPT, what's this? And it'll just tell him.
Yep.
But like, how much do we need to know about what's going on behind there? Because a lot of people, I think, on this campus are intimidated. I'm kind of intimidated. I think it's healthy to be intimidated, but are intimidated by the technology. Like, oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't understand it like that. How much do you think we need to know about how it works?
Well, I think that it really depends, like, what you use it for, in the sense that what we were talking about, like if you are teaching a class and you're trying to use it on, where students are try to write a history essay, and they're trying to think critically about a particular topic, having a basic sense of like what hallucinations are and how it's bad with references, or things like that. So having some sort of like idea of when it works and when it doesn't in the particular context that you want to use it for, I think that's good. I don't know that the fundamental understanding of AI algorithms and how they work is necessary, so similar with every machine that we use, how we use the computer, how do we use the internet and things like that. We need to have an educated user manual for this without necessarily knowing every chip and every circuit in the box, like what it does.
It's like the car. Like we have some knowledge of how our cars work, but not all of us are mechanics. And I guess
exactly.
Yeah.
I like that.
Like if the car doesn't start, we need to know enough to be like, okay, what are the most common reasons why this wouldn't start?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. I think one of the real stars of the chapters was his 4 principles, his 4 rules for co-intelligence. Like,
yes.
I think, I don't know. I'm very curious what you think. Some of these, like, I was like, are you serious? Actually, I think in the notes I sent you, I actually added some of it's hard for the personality to stay out of everything because I just keep having personality. But like,
no.
His 4, I think it's healthy. My students like it. So for the 4, his 4 things, let me just read them real fast into the record here, and then we could talk about them because the audience probably hasn't read his book. All right, the first one is always invite AI to the table. Second one is be the human in the loop. Okay. And try not to comment between each one. The third one, treat AI like a person. And the fourth one, assume this is the worst AI you'll ever use. So those are his 4 principles for co-intelligence. The whole purpose of his book is co-intelligence, the idea that how we can work with AI. All right, so always invite AI to the table, the first one. Where are you on that? Do you agree, disagree? What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I thought that was a gimmick to challenge people, to make people go like, what are you talking about always?
I think it worked. I think it worked. I took the bait.
And it worked.
He gaslighted me.
Yes. So I think that was kind of like a trick, but let's take the sentence seriously for a second. I think that, first of all, always, as in the professional context or in our personal life, like, does that mean that I am attached to my AI 24/7 and I bring in whatever with me, I go for a run and I ask it like, should I go faster or slower? Like, what is the always, So for now, I will just say that I will take it within the context of professional life, and using it as a tool. In that context, I would say that, similar, to the tools that I have, I might think, will I use my computer, my ruler, my whatever it is, my notebook? I may consider those, and I will consider AI as one of those tools. And in that context, I don't have a particular reason to say from the very beginning, I will not invite AI to the table because I don't believe in it. I will consider my range of tools and say that it's useful for me in this particular situation or it's not. When it comes to like life as a whole, then absolutely not. I want to go out and watch the sunset and have nothing to do with AI.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The AI cannot be part of the sunset. I agree. The sunset's on the Missouri River.
And not use AI to come up with answers to my texts.
Yes, just let us speculate for once. Let's just speculate. I mean, I know you're new to town. The Missouri River, like, I love going. Like, we live close to there. Beautiful sunsets, just beautiful sunsets on the river. All right, so I think I agree with what you were saying. Was basically, and maybe we could edit this from always invite AI to consider inviting AI. Consider inviting, like, 4 rules for co-intelligence. Consider inviting AI to the table. Wonderful. Yeah. I'm good. Always invite, which is what he said. I'm gaslit at that, right? Like you said, there's just some things with our students or with our work as researchers, because I'm always like, I'm thinking now, like, is this, should I take the time to look this up in a book, or should I just ask ChatGPT or Gemini, how many years was this person on the Supreme Court or something like that? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I trust. So, like, we're all having to figure out how much. So consider inviting might be much healthier than always. The second one, be the human in the loop. Sure, right? I can do this. I think that's really, I think the most solid, having worked on the AI task force now and thinking about it for the last few years, I mean, the best advice right now seems to be keep a human in the loop, right? Don't turn in things that are purely written by AI, but read them before you publish them or you send them, or like always be engaged with it. And I think that's a good practice for our students, is to teach them to be engaged with the AI at the most. Does that make sense to you?
I think that's the very, very critical part, to really impress on our students, to have that as a rule, right? I mean, for me, always be the human in the loop. Maybe the always be.
Yes, let's move the always down.
In the second one and not in the first one.
We can donate the always from the previous sentence to the second one. Excellent. I actually made an editing mark on my paper, like it matters. All right, the third one might be even more gaslighting than the first one. Treat AI like a person. Oh.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I kind of like, I think I understand what he was getting at. And I will say that from my experience in having dialogues with it, about, I don't know, like, we might talk about how to handle, for example, a challenging situation with a colleague, right? That if I am engaging in conversation with it about a human situation, I will bring kind of like my human interaction tools into that communication and be like, hey, what are you talking about now? Like, you are being persistent. You are being, like, I have used phrases like that in my communication with AI, even though I don't see it as a person, right, just because we are talking about something that's person-oriented and human-oriented. And I feel that there is benefit in getting better insights out of it when you do that. Because it learns how to interact with humans if you actually give it that type of feedback. So that's as far as I would go when I would say treat it as a person.
That's really, I don't think I would have thought of that at all. So I'm glad you thought about that, because I thought two things. I thought, treating AI as a person is probably a good habit so we don't become even meaner to each other as humans. Because I feel like, we've gotten used to the anonymity of online communication where we often don't remember people are human and destroy them on social media and stuff like that.
Yep.
So in that sense, treating AI as like a person makes sense, because we don't forget, like, if we get in the habit of being mean to computers, maybe we'll get in the habit of being to people too. I don't know. I think your reason was better than that. But the other thought I had was treat it like a person. Well, I immediately went, because I teach communication law, I immediately went to, well, personhood. Are we going to give AI personhood on a rights level? And what are the free expression, like, because I teach First Amendment law, like what are the rights things? So I was like, if we start to treat it like a person, will it transition from a tool to an entity that has some kind of rights, and what will that mean for our society? But I think you had the more saner reason, so thank you for putting that in there, and everybody can just ignore mine and listen to yours. The last one was...
No, I mean, yours is what you see in the movies, right? This is what happens in the movies. This is a natural evolution, because right now we just type in a chatbot. But when these things become, have like faces like humans, and it's VR and this and that, we are going to be much more likely to humanize and personify them. So I could definitely see your reasoning as a future concern.
I think we tend to project human emotion on things, right? Do you name your cars? Do you name your car? Does your car have a name?
Yes.
Yeah, see, we do it, right?
Yes.
All our cars in my family have names, my teenagers' cars and everything. And then, like, our dog or our pets, like, we project emotions. Like, my dog's actual range of emotions is probably, like, very small. But we're just like, oh, he's sad, he's happy. No, he just wants to know where he can go to the bathroom. Like, that's all he wants to know. What can I pee on
We
now?
do that all the time, too, with our dogs.
Yeah, like projecting emotions onto things. Anyway, the last one he did was, I didn't ask you what the name of your vehicle was. What was the...
Dorota.
And does that have a meaning, like a...
It has no meaning.
Okay,
My daughter and I just came up with it like,
okay.
Dorota. That's it.
I have an electric car, and my wife calls it Eddie. I don't know why.
Okay.
So it's Eddie. And we have a car named Watson because that was the previous owner's name, and he left his name in the car. He left like a business card, so we call it Watson. So we I don't know. We have names for all the cars. Okay, the last one is assume this is the worst AI you'll ever use. Fair. I think that's probably likely that any technology, that it will get better. So really the always invite and the treat like a person, those were the ones that I was just super skeptical about. But I mean, taken in the right context, I guess they make sense. I wanted to make sure I asked you more about neurodiversity. I know you got the chance to bring it up earlier, but AI and neurodiversity, I mean, what can you tell us? Like, you have specialization in this, and I think it could really help our campus.
So there is two parts. The first one is what we kind of like touched on before, which is how you train the system so that it represents a wide range of human thought and human cognition. Mm-hmm. And so there is no question that when it comes, for example, to people on the spectrum, or, I mean, by definition, this is a text-based environment, that someone who has ADHD or dyslexia is much less likely. I mean, yes, now there is the audio and all of that, which helps, but a text-based environment automatically biases the system not to interact with people who are not, whose mind works in pictures, for example, which is very, very much the case for a lot of neurodiverse people. And so how do we take this into account to both make the technology more widely accessible, but also that the technology benefits from these different modes of thinking and communicating and the knowledge that comes with that. And that we don't end up, for example, there's a lot of like educational platforms that use AI, and they're all trained on a very classic, type of educational style. So we are creating tools that are gonna feed into the same education system that was there before. And this kind of like brings me to the second part, which is this is actually an opportunity to have AI work as an equalizer for people who think differently, because it can take certain types of thinking or communication and transform it to something that someone who thinks differently works. So with my collaborators, we were kind of like thinking about how can we develop AI tools, for example, that support teamwork. That where in a Zoom call, AI learns to read facial expressions and help, autistic individuals read facial expression, because that's not something that comes natural to them. And so in this context, it may be a limitation for the communication to proceed smoothly. So that's a small example on how AI can become a tool to actually work as a level playing field when it comes to neurodiversity.
So I'm always trying to think about the faculty member who, okay, so it's spring now. So next school year, next fall, the faculty member who's getting ready for class and feels like they should be doing something with AI in their class. What advice would you give them about how to get started using AI to teach or to teach their students about AI?
I mean, the first thing is to start using it for yourself, because if you don't have a personal experience on kind of like the range of things that it can do or that it can go wrong, or how you interact with it, I mean, the best way to teach something is to first have like an intimate experience with it yourself. So I think that trying to like develop AI exercises or homeworks or things like that in a vacuum is not very productive. So it's good to really understand that. And the second part that I would say is that I really liked what you did with your TAs, where you had them run the exam with the AI, that when you actually try to develop something, it could be as simple as take a homework problem and solve it with the AI, solve it yourself, and compare the results, so that you put your students through like a critical thinking exercise, so that you have kind of like gotten ahead of the issue yourself, because now you kind of like made the students do it, right? And if you have done it on your own, then this is just a simple way to get started. Take your classic homework and materials and see what AI does with it, and have your students think critically about it. I see that as low-hanging fruit.
It is. I think it's the best move is to, especially for people who are skeptical about AI. I'm skeptical about AI. Like you said at the very beginning, I feel like I have to address it. I have to engage with it. I'm in a communication field, and it is a form of knowledge, basically. And so, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to have your students engage with it critically and be like, here's what it did. Like I plan in my class tomorrow, like we're going to look at some principles that we've established. I'm going to use it as a review tool. So like we established the principles on Tuesday. Tomorrow we're going to go into class, and as my way of bringing it back onto their mind so I can build onto what we need to do that class period, I'm going to be like, here's what the AI tool said about these concepts. Now did it get it right? What did it get wrong? And I think that hopefully is training the human in the loop. It's training them to say, okay,
exactly,
it knows stuff, but the habit isn't just to take the knowledge, it's to evaluate the knowledge and say, it said this, but you have to know enough. It's almost like when you had to learn long math. Like, I don't even know how to say math. Like you had to learn how to write out the math. This was a long time for someone like me who had to take like rudimentary algebra in college, but like, you had to write it out even though a calculator could do it, so you could understand what the calculator was doing, I guess, is what we're doing. We're human in the looping. We're evaluating it. So that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of controversy on campus about, I don't know if it's controversy, but there's a lot of healthy discussion on campus about what faculty should be doing for AI. Is there anything else that you think, any other thoughts you have about what they should do? Because I mean, I'm having students come to my office and they're saying, oh, you're on such and such AI thing. What should I be doing? Or I have faculty come to my office and say the same thing. Like, I don't know how to grade this. I don't know how to, I don't know how to evaluate student work. What are some other things that you can think of that might be helpful to either a student or a faculty member who just isn't sure how to do school anymore because of how it's changing us?
So I think that a lot of the times where we find most of our roadblocks with AI is of the way that we think about assessing knowledge. This is where the crux of the problem always is. It's not about transmitting the knowledge, it's about assessing the knowledge, and that we think of it in a way that is, and I mean, it is within our constraints, right? I mean, we have a class with 200 students maybe, and then we think of a timed exam with multiple choice questions or with like solving a problem as the way to assess knowledge. And then, yes, you bump up against AI, or if you ask the students to kind of like write an essay or a prompt on this, and you get it back from them and you have no idea if AI was used or not, then obviously if you use the traditional assessment, then you're going to bump up against that problem. And so thinking about new ways of assessing knowledge, that I think that's the crux of the issue with our profession, and how we can do that in creative ways that don't kill us in terms of resources,
Right.
because we have to do everything one-on-one, but at the same time is gets around that like cheating, or I don't know if AI did it, or something like that.
No, it makes a lot of sense. You know what, I wanted to ask you one other thing, and then I know deans are busy. I know our dean's always busy. So, or actually he looks busy. Anyway, I will delete all of this out. But anyway, for engineering specifically, since you are in the engineering field, as far as teaching and learning go, well, how is AI changing what you are doing in your school? What are the opportunities for teaching, and what are the challenges?
So this is something that I actually spend quite a bit of time, thinking about, because it's my area of interest personally. So there's a couple of different things. One is to thinking of AI as a tool for teaching and learning itself, and see if we can use that as, for example, have intelligent tutors that will help what the tutors are doing, and again, it would be a human in the loop type of tutor, or, kind of like use it as a way to expand kind of like our human capital, because we never have enough teaching assistants, we never have enough peer tutors and stuff like that. So thinking about developing technology that is tailored to our particular students and our particular audience is one of the things that I think it's an opportunity that I'm working with some faculty members to do. That's one part. The second part is we are training the next generation of engineers whose jobs may look different 3 and 4 years from now when they graduate. And how do we make sure that they still get kind of like the fundamental knowledge that they need, the calculus and the dynamics and statics and things like that, but at the same time have enough knowledge on how to use AI tools, or how AI is shaping and changing the field, so that they are AI literate in their particular domain by the time that they graduate. So those are kind of like the two axes along which we are having conversations.
Thank you so much for joining the AI Critical Literacy podcast. It has been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, this was super fun. Thank you for inviting me.